Felt embarrassed when boyfriend kept skipping group hangouts until he finally broke down one night and told me how my female friends had been crossing the line every time I left him alone with them. I thought that I was the person who had the perfect balance in life: loving boyfriend, good circle of friends, and future that was secure. We were not showy. We were not the couple who posted every minute on the internet, but we had a low-key something real. At least, I thought that we did. I thought that I knew what was going on in my own life. I thought I understood the people around me. I didn't. Not even remotely. Outside in, it all appeared perfect. I was in my late 20s, with a nice apartment, a job that I didn't hate, and friends surrounding me that I loved. I had been with my boyfriend for almost 2 years. He was warm, emotionally grounded, and he had this calming presence that always left me feeling safe. We didn't see eye to eye on everything, no couple does, but we trusted one another. Or at least I did. When the first moment something wasn't right came along, it was subtle. I invited him for a drink with my girlfriends, just a small Friday night social thing, and he objected. He said he was tired. Long week, work stress. I let it drop. We all need our space sometimes. But then again it occurred. And again. He'd always have an excuse. Headache. Deadline. Something with his brother. I used to trust him. At first I did. But soon it gnawed at me. These weren't excuses, they were roadblocks. He was avoiding them. And I didn't know why. My friends did, as well. They'd be all, "Why don't we like him?" and dismiss it, but they had biting tones. I defended him, every time. Said he was shy. Said he just wasn't into mass group parties. But part of me was embarrassed. I was trapped in this awkward in-between place. My boyfriend, whom I adored, was more and more avoiding my best friends. And they, in return, continued to suggest that he was rude or aloof. The tension began to build gradually, like pressure building beneath the surface. I remember this one night, lying in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that hums in your ears. I turned to him and asked softly, "Don't you like them? My friends?" He paused, and that pause. It was as if a long-shut door groaned open. But then he just let out a sigh and muttered, "It's complicated." Complicated. What exactly is that? The following few weeks were strange. He drew farther away, and I felt I was being pulled in two directions. I hated feeling that I was being forced to choose between him and them. My friends started telling me things like, "He's too controlling," or "Are you certain he's not isolating you?" It got under my head. I started questioning him. Questioning if perhaps I was overlooking something deeper. I mean, it's not typical, is it? For your boyfriend to flat out shun the people dearest to you? So one night, after another night of dinner dates being called off, I snapped. Not in screaming mode, but in that exhausted, quiet way that people implode. I glared at him and said, "You're driving me away from the ones I love. And I don't even know why." He didn't tell me initially. He just sat there and stared at the ground, fists clenched in his lap, as if he was fighting something abstract within him. Then he got up, started pacing the room, and then he looked at me. His voice was low, flat, like it hurt him to speak. Because one of them touched me. My heart stopped. Literally, the air was sucked out of the room. I blinked. What? He glared away again. More than one, as a matter of fact. But it started with one. The first time you went out with them and took me along. She waited till you went to the bathroom. Put her hand on my thigh and whispered something disgusting in my ear. My stomach twisted. I felt warmth rising in my neck, anger, confusion, shame all colliding into one another at once. I didn't know what to think. I shook my head to try to settle down. Are you kidding me? Who? What did she say? He did not use fingers. Not yet. I saw it in his eyes, the battle to defend me and defend himself. But then he went on. It was not just the one time. After that, whenever we were all together, it was little things. Grabbing, whispering things. Laughing like it was a joke when I pulled away. I didn't know how to reply. I felt the ground shifting beneath me. These were my friends. Women I trusted. Women I had stood up for. And yet, here he was broken, humiliated, telling me they had attacked him. And he had not said anything before because who would have believed him? I thought I must have dreamed it at first. He told her, his voice cracking a bit. I didn't want to cause trouble between you and them. But it just kept going on. And I felt stuck. Like if I told you, you'd blame me? Or worse, you'd still be friends with them anyway. That struck me. The realization that he'd been bearing this in silence, protecting me, suffering as well, it shattered me. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, my hands shaking. I didn't cry right away. I was too stunned. Too bewildered. My entire world had been flipped upside down. I remembered all of the nights I'd teased him for missing out on fun. All of the times I'd urged him to just come out for a little bit. I was sick. I'd willingly put him back into that place, again and again. I breathed, "Why didn't you tell me?" He did a sarcastic laugh. Because nobody takes it seriously when it happens to guys. Particularly not from women. Particularly not from your girlfriend's friends. I reached out and took hold of his hand. It was cold. I squeezed it hard and tried to catch his eyes, but he pulled away. And for the first time in our relationship, I felt him actually pull away from me, not physically, but emotionally. As if some piece of him had already accepted that this would be the thing that would break us. But it didn't. Not yet. I didn't sleep that evening. I lay there, eyes fixed on the ceiling, thinking about every moment I could remember, the ones where I thought they were just being friendly, being flirtatious even. I had rolled my eyes, laughed along with them. God. The humiliation was all I could handle. I felt like I had failed him. Failed to see. Failed to protect him. And worst of all, I had no clue what to do next. The next morning, everything was different. He was withdrawn but not distant. Just empty. And I was trying so hard to hold it all together, but I couldn't resist reliving every memory, looking for clues I'd overlooked. I couldn't help but wonder, how did I not see it? These weren't strangers. These were women whom I'd hugged and laughed and cried. Women who'd stood beside me on breakups and birthdays, women whom I'd thought of as sisters. I made us coffee, but it went untouched. I sat beside him on the couch and told him, I want you to tell me who. I won't go after them right now. I won't do anything until we talk more. But I need to know. He hesitated again. Then he spoke. 3 of them. 3. And then, suddenly, pieces started falling into place. How one of them had made a joke at some point before, if you ever get a break with her, I'm next. Or how another would get too drunk and stumble into him when we were clubbing, us both laughing a little too hard. I'd laughed it off too. I told myself it was harmless. She's just like that. She plays around with everyone. It wasn't harmless. I made him promise to tell me everything, if and only if he was prepared. He breathed deeply and began to speak. The first encounter was not an isolated incident. She had developed a habit of touching him in areas that made him uncomfortable, and always when my back was faced away from him. She'd say in his ear things that were innuendo, even going so far as to ask if we were open to experimenting before backing away with a laugh. He said he froze every time. That he didn't want to be a scene fixer, didn't want to create drama between me and my friends, so he said nothing. Over and over. The second friend had cornered him in a party corridor and questioned him on why he was wasting himself on me. She had pulled on his arm, tried to pull him into the bathroom. He pushed her away. She laughed and told him he was uptight. I wasn't even aware that it had happened. I'd been in the living room that night, playing cards, having no clue. And the third, the one who had haunted him the most, had sent him a picture. Late at night, when I was sleeping beside him. I didn't realize until he took out the phone. He'd saved it but hadn't opened it up until that night. His hands were shaking as he scrolled to the message and handed me the phone. It was her. Half-dressed. Smiling. Caption: bet you think about this when you're with her. I felt sick to my stomach. I stared at this message, at this smile I had come to know so intimately, and felt this wave of betrayal wash over me. I glared up at him and snarled, "Why didn't you show me this sooner?" He whispered, "Because I didn't want to lose you." And I knew what this would do. He was right. I felt something inside me rip. This wasn't just a desecration of him, this was a desecration of us. Of me. Of the belief in my friends and me. I did not even know what to call them anymore. Friends? The word felt sick on my lips now. I walked around the rest of that day in a daze. I didn't respond to texts. I couldn't handle seeing their names on my screen. I was afraid that if I saw one of them in person, I would scream. Or cry. Or both. I couldn't understand how they could do what they did, and then smile in my face like everything was fine. How could they create every boundary and still be my support system? The next few days were tense. I hadn't spoken to anyone yet. I needed time to consider. He slept over each night, and I tried to show in small ways that I still trusted him. That I was with him. I'd cook for him, touch my fingers through his hair, let him rest his head on my lap in silence. But I could feel something broken between us, not because of what he'd done, but due to what he'd endured. And for how long he'd had to carry it around alone. That evening, in bed, he whispered, "Do you think differently of me now?" I turned over and said, "No. I think differently of them. But actually, I also thought differently about myself. I thought that I was the type of person who would know if something like this was happening. I thought I could read the room, read people. But I hadn't been seeing any of it. Then finally, I had to confront them. Not all at once. Not via group text or something sloppy. I called one of them, the one who'd sent a photo. She picked up like everything was fine. "Hey. Haven't heard from you in ages. Everything okay?" I replied bluntly, "I know what you did." There was a moment of silence. Then a nervous laugh. "What do you mean?" I told her as I was telling. I did not yell. I did not sob. I simply laid it out there, the messages, the touching, the bathroom incident, all of it. And the silence that followed was the most honest thing she'd ever given me. She tried to spin it. Told me it was just a joke. That he had misunderstood. That he was probably being flattered. Something within me broke. I said to her, "He was scared to tell me. He thought you'd ruin our relationship, and now I wish he told me earlier so that I'd have avoided you from my life earlier." She's angry. Told me I was being foolish. That he must have fabricated all this because he didn't want me to get close to his friends. I hung up. Then I didn't call the other two. I didn't have to. I blocked them. I deleted the group chat. I didn't need to say anything. I didn't owe them that. They knew what they'd done. But blocking them out didn't make everything okay. There was still this thick, heavy silence between my boyfriend and me. Not because we didn't like each other, we did. But because trauma isn't just erased because you remove the source. He still flinched when we passed by women who looked like them. Still recoiled when I touched him behind. And I still felt guilty. For missing it. For not being there to protect him. For letting them get so close. We sat out on the balcony one night, wrapped in a blanket, and we watched the city lights glimmering at night. I said, "I'm sorry it took so long to see that you were hurting." He looked at me and said, "I'm just glad you believe me." And I did. With all of my being. But belief was not enough. I knew it would be a process to mend what they tried to break, for him to feel safe, even with me. And I would wait. To listen. To love him more. Things didn't go back to normal overnight. In fact, I'm not sure they ever truly did. After everything came out, after the calls and the blocks and the silent dissolving of friendships that had once felt like family, there was a strange emptiness in my life. But also, clarity. It's strange how quiet your world becomes when the background noise is finally gone. Those friends, those women had been my habit of years. My Saturdays, my group texts, my complaining. And yet, now that I looked back, I could see how many times I'd brushed off my own discomfort. Their jokes, always a fraction too sharp. How they'd look at my boyfriend when they didn't think I was watching. Their ownership of my time, the way they smiled and snickered behind my back at him. I had wished to give them the best. And for this, they had taken something valuable from him, his peace. He never forced me to choose. Never gave me ultimatums. That was not in his nature. But I could see how much he had been hurt. And not just by them, by me too. Because I had left him behind in a war that I couldn't see. We talked a lot about it during those weeks later on. Quietly. Accurately. Occasionally in the dead of night, occasionally over breakfast. I didn't pressure him, and he didn't sensationalize anything. He told me that the worst of it wasn't even what they did, it was the fear of saying something because no one would be believed. That people would make fun of him. That even I would. He added, men can't be victims. Not of women, at least. If it was the reverse, nobody would be accusing me of overreacting. And he was right. That double standard is terrible. I hate that he had to endure that. I hate that I used to be one of those people who would have just brushed it under the rug if he hadn't looked at me directly in the eye and said it out loud. We started doing small things together again, not just date nights, but healing things. Phone-free strolls, coffee Sundays, and prolonged conversations. We took things slowly. I made space for his silences, and he slowly began to let me in again. One night, he handed the phone back to me with the photo still in the messages. You can erase it, he said. I never want to see her face again. I erased it. And I blocked the number myself. Not because he asked me to, he never asked me for anything. But because I wanted to reclaim something too. My safety. My loyalty. My self-respect. I had blamed myself for so long. For not noticing. For believing their behavior was just kidding or funny. But I noticed something significant. Just because a person smiles when they've crossed a line doesn't make that line any less crossed. And just because a man doesn't yell or fight back doesn't mean he wasn't harmed. I began talking to individuals about it quietly, discreetly, with individuals that I believed. And the more I spoke, the more I identified how prevalent his experience was. Other males started telling me things. About being touched inappropriately. About comments made in public that nobody spoke up about. And I started to understand just how invisible this kind of trauma can be when the world doesn't wish to see it. We both started going to a therapist. One at first, individually. Then later on, we did a couple of sessions together. It wasn't easy. There were nights that we fought, not because we didn't love, but because recovery is messy. There were nights that I caught myself saying something inconsiderate and had to hastily recover from it. Nights he shut down because the trust was still being rebuilt. But we stuck around. We didn't leave. There was a period, maybe 2 months after all of it had come out, when we were sitting in the park. The sun was setting, and he was lying on the grass, eyes closed. I looked over at him and thought, he's starting to come back. Not to me, he never ever left me. But to himself. The portion of him that wasn't always so coiled or guarded. I knelt down and whispered, I'm proud of you. He opened one eye and smiled softly. For what? For surviving. For speaking. For trusting me with your pain. He grasped my hand, held it tightly, and said, I didn't know if I could. But I'm glad I did. That was the moment when I knew we'd be okay. I haven't seen or heard from those women since. A few mutual friends asked what happened, and I just told them that we'd grown apart. I didn't want to share it out loud. The people who had to know knew. And the others I was done people managing. And that was that. This whole ordeal did one thing that I never saw coming. It showed me that love isn't just about being with someone when things are good. It's about having the guts to stick with them when there's silence, when they're processing something you'll never quite get. It's about believing them even when you don't want to. Especially when you don't want to. I lost some friends. But I gained something better. I gained a sense of greater understanding in our relationship. I gained an awareness of my own blind spots and started doing the hard work of addressing them. I learned how to stop sweeping things under the rug, to listen more carefully, and to never again assume that someone's strength means that they do not need assistance. I do not tell this story for sympathy. I tell it because people need to understand that harassment is not always obvious. That it is not always a bruise or an arched eyebrow. That it is sometimes a laugh. A harmless brush on the arm. Weighty silence every day that gets progressively heavier. My boyfriend didn't need me to rescue him. He just needed me to see him. And once I did, I never stopped observing. We're still together. Stronger even. Not because we moved on, but because we moved through it. Together. With honesty. With patience. With love that chose to stay when everything else was falling apart. And I carry that lesson with me every day now. Listen more closely. Look beneath the surface. And never, ever assume that silence means nothing happened.